And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello and welcome to Monday's Flying Weather segment. The chart for tomorrow morning showing some IFR up here along the central and eastern Brooks Range area with marginal VFR for the Arctic coast and a little bit down into the Yukon Flats area here with some IFR just to the south and then the White Mountains there north of Fairbanks. Southern Alaska VFR here including Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, narrow band of marginal VFR here along the Kuskokwim River right out to the Delta, to the north, Yukon Delta, St. Lawrence Island, all the way up to the western Arctic coast VFR. Mostly marginal here for the Bering Sea into the Alaska Peninsula, although some VFR here in advance of a system here that's pushing an IFR band in toward the western Aleutians. And for the southeast coast, marginal VFR. For the afternoon, we've got some IFR there over the northern Panhandle, Lynx Canal Glacier Bay area, otherwise marginal, on down into Dixon Entrance. Gulf of Alaska, marginal VFR, that system swinging in there and starting to pull back to the northwest. And that puts marginal VFR here into Prince William Sound and most of the Kenai Peninsula, but western peninsula there, Susitna Valley, Cook Inlet, into the Kuskokwim Valley, looking good. Mostly VFR here, all the way up to the Brooks Range. A little bit lower conditions here for the east side. And the North Slope and Arctic coast, marginal VFR and a narrow band of marginal conditions from the Chukchi Sea down through the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island, down to the Pribilofs, and covering much of the southeast Bering Sea here. And some marginal conditions up into Kuskokwim Bay and inland there to the southern Kuskokwim Valley. Otherwise, not too bad, just a lot of marginal VFR here for the southern Bering Sea and a narrow band of IFR here with the garden variety front pushing eastward there over the central Aleutians. And then actually Wednesday morning, that area, that system pulls off to the southeast, leaving marginal VFR behind here from Kodiak Island westward out to Amchitka and Kiska. A lot of marginal VFR here over the central Bering Sea, extending across St. Lawrence Island, right on up into the western North Slope and Arctic coast with IFR here from the Brooks Range out to the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, and VFR south of the mountains there, and then marginal VFR in the central interior to IFR there over the 40-mile country up to about Eagle or so. And marginal VFR, Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, Madawaska-Susitna Valley, some VFR for the Copper River Basin, and VFR Wednesday morning for Prince William Sound, the North Gulf Coast, staying marginal over the Panhandle. And that extends right through the afternoon for the southeast coast and North Gulf Coast with marginal VFR there. A little bit of IFR possible here along portions of the Alaska Range, otherwise pretty good. Southern Alaska, mostly VFR. Again, scattered marginal VFR Kodiak Island. Mostly VFR over the northern interior areas, and IFR for the North Slope and eastern Beaufort Sea coast. And out west here, mostly marginal VFR, some VFR, especially here, Nunivak Island on up in toward Norton Sound and the southeast Bering Sea, and then the north shores of the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, looking a little marginal. And for the passes, Anatuvik, marginal VFR at times tomorrow, especially north side, and Adigan, marginal VFR, except VFR on the southern entrance with Lake Clark and Merrill. Look for VFR throughout the day on Tuesday. And, excuse me, rainy, marginal VFR. Windy looks marginal at times as well. So does Isabel, but Mentasta, mostly VFR with lower conditions possible on the northern entrance. Tanita, marginal VFR, Portage, marginal, and Chilkoot and White, IFR. Freezing levels here at the surface, right down and off the southwest coast tomorrow morning, but north there to St. Lawrence Island, up into the southern Kenai Peninsula, eastward there, just south of the North Gulf Coast over the northern Panhandle. Looking at about 4,000 feet here for the southeast coast, and the 2,000-foot line here right along the Aleutians into the Alaska Peninsula. Icing with that next front pushing eastward here. Look for a band of considerable moderate rime icing advancing with the front, along in advance of the front, extending about from Adak eastward there toward almost Nikolsky, and then back just to the north of the western Aleutians, and another area here of considerable moderate icing right along the Panhandle into the eastern Gulf of Alaska and extending up along the North Gulf Coast. And for the jet stream, we've got trough of low pressure out here over the southern Bering Sea, that keeping the stronger jet along and just south of the Aleutians. There you can see 110 knots there, a short distance south of Adak. Otherwise, that kind of takes off to the southeast. So any systems forming out here coming along the Aleutians also drop southeastward there, down around this low that'll start to angle back up to the north and northwest a little bit over the next couple of days. Otherwise, we're looking at southerly flow here turning southwest right into the Panhandle. Of course, that's a wet weather pattern for that area. And for 9,000 feet, good south winds, 80 knots, not quite 100, 80 knots there, bearing down on Prince of Wales Island, southeast 35 knots to the North Gulf Coast, east winds 35 here, coming across Norton Sound and around this low along the Yukon Delta to Nunivak Island. And again, the stronger winds just to the south of the Aleutians out to the west. 3,000 feet, southeast winds now 50 knots up across Adak and Atka in conjunction with this low center just to the south there. Pretty light over the northern eastern Bering Sea into the interior. Narrow band of 35 knot winds here for the North Gulf Coast with the stronger winds down to the south here, 55 knots blowing up across Dixon Entrance. Turbulence with that band of stronger winds to some isolated moderate here for Montague Island and the North Gulf Coast, with a heavier turbulence occurring down over the Queen Charlotte Islands, Prince of Wales Island, up to about Sitka, Port Alexander possibly, and then out over the Aleutians, just some isolated moderate possible there for Atka, Adak, westward to about Kiska Island.